When we last visited the wasp nest, we watched as a tropical wasp constructed her nest, laid her eggs, and tended the developing pupae. Over time she was joined by additional worker wasps who, among other tasks, helped protect the hive against intruders. As we visit the nest again a few weeks later, we can see that the nest has grown slightly as additional external chambers have been added. The small community of 4 wasps has remained intact, and so has the threat posed by predators, particularly the greater banded hornet. Almost as soon as the camera starts filming, a hornet approaches and one of the wasps flies out to fend him off. The hornet avoids the first wasp and manages to land on the nest, but is forcibly removed and chased off by the other wasps. The hornet does not give up easily and comes right back, only to suffer some close combat at the hands of the wasps, for which he needs to take respite in a nearby bougainvillea bush. Back at the nest, 3 of the wasps resume their defensive positions around the exterior, but the skirmish has left a casualty. She is still moving, but only barely, and will not last much longer. Meanwhile, the remaining wasps continue their work protecting the nest. 2 weeks later, the founder of the nest is left by herself. The nest is now at its most vulnerable. Close up, the queen looks suitably menacing, but is this enough to defend the nest? The hornet wastes no time. The wasp detects him and easily sends him away. But the hornet knows that this is a perfect opportunity and comes right back. Once again, the wasp puts up a strong defense. But curiously, this time she flies away from the nest instead of back to it. The hornet sees his chance and enters the unattended nest. The nest is as good as finished. The hornet has snatched one of the pupae from the comb and dropped it through the bottom of the nest onto the ground below. Another pupa has landed in a runoff drain. The hornet furiously tries to lift it out of the drain to get it onto a flat surface. But the pupa is too heavy and cumbersome, and he decides to devour it in the drain. The hornet attacks the pupa with the furious frenzy of a wild animal in the jungle. Within 2 minutes, all that remains are some pieces of skeleton that the hornet has rejected. The other pupa lies motionless on the tiles. Back in the nest, the wasp walks backwards and forwards over the comb that until 2 minutes ago supported her pupae. If wasps have emotions, she must now be totally distraught and devastated. Hopelessly, she surveys the exterior of the nest. And then she detects a familiar scent. The hornet is back. She flies out to repel him, but is in no condition to put up a fight, and she promptly retreats to the nest. The hornet follows and taunts her from the outside. He tries the other access. The wasp follows on the inside and makes a bold gesture of aggression. For the next 5 minutes, the hornet relentlessly continues to pummel on the outside of the nest, possibly to allow time for his recent feast to digest. From time to time, the wasp manages to put up a token defense. But as we see in these freeze frames, the hornet suddenly seizes an opportunity to grab the wasp out of the nest. The wasp manages to free herself and is pursued by the hornet until she is able to return to the safety of the nest. She is exhausted and helpless. She makes a short flight out and back as if to test her stamina. She emerges from the nest and hovers outside as if in contemplation. There is nothing further for her here. She flies out and seems as if she intends to return, but she hesitates slightly and then flies off. This was the last we saw of her, and the nest now remains dilapidated and empty.